Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Truth Table. I'm Paul Everton, the host, and this is episode 57, February 21st, mere 6 days before the election. And the Libertarian Party has been around for a very long time. And after seeing the truckers' convoy and the the Freedom Party, Freedom Movement, and I just don't understand why we don't have, a majority libertarian government. It's, it seems like freedom is important to everybody when they're being infringed upon, but it's like no one's realizing that there is a way, and the Libertarian Party is like the Ron Paul of Canada, trying to save your freedom. And hopefully, people will pay more attention because the Libertarian Party really need to get their seats. They need to get seats in the legislature. Otherwise, this is never going to stop. And the media is quite complicit by supporting all the four parties that voted for Bill 67, the critical race theory bill. They all voted for it. The Green Party, the NDP is the one that brought it into the legislature, but only Belinda is the only person that said no to it, and that's a big problem. But my guest tonight, I'm very honored to have the leader of the Ontario Libertarian Party, and in my opinion, he was absolutely the best choice that they could make. I think they made a very wise choice with Mark, and I'm going to let you meet him and have a chat with him right after this. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Mark, for joining me on the Truth Table. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. We need more truth tellers in the form of podcasting because we can't trust the media. It's just as simple as that. The only truth that comes out is from independent media. Thank you so much.
No, I agree 100%. So your riding is Leeds, Granville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
Yep.
Is that a large area, or with a whole bunch of small regions?
Cardinal, all the way over to Gananoque, all the way up to Brockville and Kempville. It's a fairly large area, pretty rural. We're rural out here.
Well, I've read all the platforms to all the different parties, and libertarian like hit me right in the heart. It's the one. It's they've always been there. I just don't understand why people haven't even paid attention. I know the media is not helping you what at all, and same as with Ron Paul in the States. So I was hoping that the truckers convoy would at least show people the libertarian options here, because
Well,
you're
I had 500,000 people watch me get arrested. And I
because you
spent
went to Ottawa.
1,000. Yeah. 4
Oh,
days after they took the bootstraps to the people on the
yeah.
20th, I went up there about 11:30 in the morning, and about a kilometer and a half away from Parliament Hill, I met a roadblock, and I wouldn't recommend it, but I chose. Being a veteran, I really honestly believe that freedom of expression and freedom of assembly is a
Mhm.
fundamental right, even though we don't have it. And I chose rather stupidly, but with honor, to cross that line and get arrested. It was the wrong type of fight to pick, but I picked it, and I had to suffer the consequences of 1,006 days before the court, 13 days of trial for a simple obstruct charge, Twice we had to go to the Superior Court of Ontario to force the Crown to provide disclosure while they're offering me all these sweetheart deals like 60 days in jail and 30 days in jail and a complete discharge with a fine to a charity of your choice. And then ultimately they tried to withdraw the charges, and we kept going back to court to force it into court and fight it.
Yeah, they just wanted it on your record so they could just slide you through the mud on the, then they'll talk about you, eh?
Yeah, and
In the
I mean,
media.
honestly, we won on a technicality. It's called the Jordan Application 11B, which is we proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the Crown failed in its 18 months to prosecute me on this very, very minor charge with no violence, first time ever arrested, no criminal record. And the judge made very good note of that. Matter of fact, he called me a senior citizen.
Oh my
It's
God.
unfair that this senior citizen should have a record. But more importantly, he made reference to another part of the criminal code, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get it right. It's either section 61, 30, subsection 31 and 32, or vice versa. I can't remember which one it is, but there is a way to sue the state when they violate your rights. And as my lawyer explained to me early on, he said what you should have done was go up there and tell them what you want to do. Because remember, I'm holding my Elections Ontario form that says I'm the duly elected leader of a political party in Ontario. I'm wearing my medals, and I'm carrying my veterans card, and I should have just got that, had them deny me on tape, and then gone after and sue them. I plan on doing a video on this with my counsel if he can get the time to show how to legally do this in Canada. Now, you're not going to get millions of dollars. We're talking probably just court costs and all that stuff, but each win is a win, right? So once I've got that down, then I'm going to test it, and hopefully I don't go to jail. I wish I could remember it. If I had the ruling up, it made it almost impossible for the Crown to counter the charges, because even though I was November 22nd, I was released of all the charges and the charges were dismissed, I still couldn't speak for another 30 days about them, which is another form of legal lawfare in which everybody goes through. Everybody went through, and including right now with the justice system in regards to our charter rights.
Well, under Section 31, do you believe that you were breaching peace by your presence?
Do I believe it? No, because I wasn't there. I wasn't carrying a placard. I wasn't leading 10 people. I wasn't driving a vehicle. I was one person, no flags, no signs, no nothing, just going to try to do a speech in front of the Peace Tower. I didn't know if I'd get to Parliament Hill, but at least I thought I'd get the backdrop of the Peace Tower. Because I wanted to do a follow-up for my February 16th speech, which I reposted again on the 16th. Which was explaining what was going to happen over the next couple of days with the EMA being enacted and the violence that was going to be put onto the people. And I would have gone up yesterday, but there's, let's just say I'm looking after a loved one right now, and it's a trying time.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. In the middle of an election.
What do you think about the Libertarian Party is the most important thing for people to understand at this point in time that you would offer them?
The key thing about us is we don't want to govern you. We don't want to control you. We see everybody as an individual, and every individual has the right to a peaceful and fruitful life, free of as much government as humanly possible. It's a very hard sell for people who have been coddled for the last 40 years. So libertarians stand for individual freedom, for property rights, which you don't have any. But
No.
I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is make people realize we can be more powerful than the government if we can form government to change the legislation that makes the people more powerful. Even so far as to make the people in charge of the funding of the services, which removes politicians and unions from the decision-making process.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant idea. Personal freedom, individual rights, limited government, but you would actually enhance individual freedoms if
Oh,
you had.
absolutely. Even before the Freedom Convoy, we were working on the Ontario Charter of Rights and Freedoms,
Mhm.
and it's on the website if you want to take a look at it. And it's a mirror of Quebec's civil code. So, in other words, it empowers the people and ensures that they are the first priority. And
Freedom of choice.
yeah,
No, I'm not 100% freedom of speech absolutist when you're like making people want to kill another person, inciting anger, rage, hatred. But other than that, criminally, do you support um, freedom of speech? Are you an absolutist, or do you have
I'm
the
an
same condition?
absolutist First Amendment style person. Um, but we don't
Hmm.
have that in Canada. We have controlled and regulated speech, whether it be Section 318 or 319. And like you, I agree that any kind of speech that offers violence in the sense of I want to do this to you or I want to do that, I'm not going to use those words. Anything that threatens violence is violent speech, and therefore you should be arrested for that if you try
Yeah.
to make people go out and I don't know,
Yep.
armed rebellion or something like that. You'll never win against the state in any armed rebellion or any kind of violence against the state because they have 10 times the volume of firepower that you have. The
Yeah.
other thing that we have to be really aware of is the human rights gender language that is out there that can be used against you civil litigation wise through unelected courts. That's one of the big things that we will get rid of is human rights commissions in Ontario because they are wholly non-legal justice systems and they need to be gone.
Would the Libertarian Party remove the Dominion voting machines and go to paper ballots?
Absolutely. Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the fact that it's being questioned, it should be a no-brainer question. The fact that there is doubt in it, a paper ballot has less doubt. So yes, absolutely, without a doubt, Dominion voting machines gone.
Do you think it's possible in Ontario that the four leading parties have been captured by the federal government, the Liberals?
I don't understand how you mean
Well,
captured.
captured because they all are following the Trudeau agenda, the critical race theory, diversity, equity, inclusion. All four of them that were at the debates, voted in favor of Bill 67, which the critical race theory, SOGI in the schools, basically usurping parental rights, religious, rights over the parents. So only one person voted against that. So that to me says the whole legislature doesn't represent us at all.
Well, of course they don't represent the two debates that I was in here in Leeds and Grenville. I introduced myself as my name is Mark Snow. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a veteran in that order. I'm also the leader of the Ontario Libertarian Party and the candidate for this riding. Those are my priorities every single day. But the first thing I want to tell you about your vote on the 27th, if I get 100% of all the votes in this riding, it's irrelevant. Because of the way that the party system works, the person you elect doesn't represent you. They only need you on election day to
Yeah.
form government, and that government, then that MPP becomes loyal to the party whip, and to the premier. They have no loyalty to you. They have no power to serve you. They have no power to do anything for you. They can't enact any kind of legislation, bill, or help you with land. They have to talk to a minister. They have to talk to a prime minister. They have to talk to somebody. We think differently. That is the problem with people thinking that we're actually exercising our vote for someone that works for us. They don't work for you. They work for the party. That's
Yeah.
why you got all of those votes that you're talking about in regards to DEI and SOGI. And those are all vote-getting demographics, uh, because we have an election by demographics. We don't have an election by individual speaking to the population on an individual basis. We speak to identifiable groups, and those demographics are what policy is designed for, whether it's bad for Ontario or Canada. That's national, provincial, municipal. Just look at all the woke left ideology terminology that's used in the leaders' debate.
Yeah, that's true. But as far as the tariffs, if you had a majority government in Ontario, how would you approach and deal with the chess game that Trump is playing with the tariffs? Because all he asked for was to, stop the drugs from coming over, stop the illegal immigration. So that basically the responsibility of our government is to protect our borders. So would you crack down on the border and the drug distribution, or would you do like Doug Ford and just rip the American liquor off the shelves?
Well, first off, we have to ask ourselves, why are they reacting this way?
Yep.
That's the first question. And the reason why Ford and everybody's acting this way is because, it's $4 billion a day at the border that crosses into the US just from the auto sector alone. And that terrifies both the federal and the provincial governments to the point where that tax base disappears if Trump pulls that production out or puts the tariff on it and makes our products useless. That terrifies and would crash the economy, putting every government at risk, not the people. They're only worried about them and the risks that comes to them. Secondary to that, what Trump has done is exposed the very failings of Canada, US, MCA, and the old NAFTA agreement, in the sense that we have corporations that have been in bed with the government for the last 40 years to ensure that their product comes in from wherever they get it, source it out of Canada, source it in Canada, it doesn't really matter. And as a result of all that centralization of oligarchy corporations, not that I'm against free market capitalism, we don't have it in Canada, but at the end of the day, because of high taxes and because of high legislative and regulatory bodies, it is no longer cost effective to build in anything in Canada. So how do you get those cheap commodities to your local grocery store while you have corporations and trade agreements that bring it in? And, people are talking about now what's made in Canada or product of Canada. Product of Canada actually is grown in Canada, let's just say, for vegetables. Made in Canada, they can import 10,000 tons of yellow-green beans and put them in a can and label them as made in Canada, product of Canada. And we don't make nothing anymore. We've lost 450,000 manufacturing jobs since the 80s. Because it's just too expensive. You can't do business. The cost of production is too high.
Yeah.
So what would I do would be the next question. Well, I could care less what the federal government says. I will bring in and twin line 3 and bring in another line. I will build natural gas generating stations, and I will destroy every single wind and solar sustainable climate change program that's out there right now, and then I will put all that towards infrastructure building, because if we don't have cheap energy and zero corporate tax, we're never going to be able to compete outside the market.
Yeah, and they're using our money to subsidize these bad ideas. And windmills, you can't recycle them. They're burying these big fans, and they're just going to, pollute the ground and the underwater aquifers. Everything you could do wrong, they've done everything wrong, Mark.
Yeah. And here's, I seen a guy, he's down in the States, he's probably 70 years old, and he swears, and I wish I could remember his name, but he said, if wind turbines and solar were so effing good, they wouldn't need government subsidies. There'd be businesses lined up because the ROI on them would be the return on investment would be so great, you wouldn't need government subsidies. So if it's such a good business model, wind and solar, why do you
They
need
wouldn't
subsidies?
need help. Exactly. Just like the media wouldn't need help.
Well, the
Would
media is
you
not.
end the funding for? I don't know if it's federal. It's more federal, isn't it? That controls the media.
Oh, no. The Ontario government has all kinds of programs. You'll see it at the end of
Okay.
every show that's Canadian.
Mhm.
The paid for the federal entertainment fund, or the provincial film, and yeah, so subsidies are everywhere, and this is what Trump is exposing, is that he's exposing our economy as a fake economy backed up by your tax dollars for
Yep.
corporations that have no desire to build anymore, because
Yep.
unless you give me what $1 billion for the auto industry, for one manufacturer, another billion for Bombardier in Quebec on a federal level. Grant. It's a grant. It's not even It's not even a contribution. It's a grant. A
Yep.
grant means no strings attached. Here's $1 billion. USA, right? Or the wiping of the foreign affairs hard drive and taking it offline so nobody could see what they were actually spending the money on, like USAID, right?
Well, they're taxing us, to hell and back. Would you fight the carbon tax? Like all the other parties are offering incentives, even though they created the poverty and the situation in the first place. They're all offering handouts. Crombie, I'll never forget Kathleen Wynne. Sorry, not sorry. Really, you're not sorry? I mean, this
I
is true
actually,
too.
I actually have some really good points about Wynne when it comes to healthcare. At least under the Wynne-McGuinty government, the
Hmm.
14 LINs, their budget line items, you could go onto each LIN and read their business plan and see what funding they got. So you could see where the actual money was going. The first thing that Doug Ford did, he got
Hmm.
rid of that.
So would a libertarian government lower taxes for people?
Um, Two sectors that we would work with is small business, corporate income tax. We will eliminate corporate income tax because only business creates new money. Government taxation doesn't create new money. We need new
Hmm.
money and we need manufacturing. That's one thing that we would work towards. Second thing that we would work towards is the infrastructure that we're going to need to support new businesses that come to Canada. Zero income tax, low energy costs, even if we have to subsidize that, because we have to build out the manufacturing base, because 1.8 million people in Ontario alone work for the provincial government. That's more than 12. That's 12% of the actual population of Ontario.
Wow.
Yeah,
Holy. I had no
yeah,
idea.
yeah. And it's funny, if you could bring up here the official riding map showing the party colors of Ontario, you'll notice something very, very unique about it. Yeah, it's not on our webpage. It would be like the Google. And you'll see in the four major population centers, the GTA, Sudbury, North Bay, and Ottawa, contains 62% of all the ridings in the province of Ontario. And they're all either NDP or Liberal. So what does that mean? That's where the vast majority of the public servants are. So much so that as the Liberals were collapsing under Kathleen Wynne, they went, oh my God, we have nobody to represent us, i.e. the unions, because that's who the Liberals were, unions. And they all the unions put their support behind the NDP. So neither the Liberals or the NDP stand for anything but the public sector unions, because it's a vast demographic of vote grabs.
Well, the province has a lot of power with education as well. I mean, what would the libertarian government do to improve the education and parental choice?
That's a really great question, because the Kempfo Labor Council Local 200, which is comprised of the English Teachers Federation of Ontario, EFTO, they
Mhm.
invited all candidates to the debate, and me and New Blue showed up at that debate. I actually got a round of applause for the Libertarians' policy on it. And the policy on what we want to do with education is this: we will attach the funding to the child. If you have 3 kids, the value of that child's voucher, if you call it that way, is around $12,400 according to the Ontario Taxpayers Federation. With that $12,400, you now control that funding, and you choose if you want your kids to go to the Catholic or the public system. And you send that funding to your board. Parents send that funding to the board. More importantly, if you don't like the choices of our public indoctrination system, our public education system, then you can choose to send your kids to a Montessori school, a private school, and that funding follows that child in 4 quarterly payments. Even better than that, if you are married and you have kids and your wife wants to stay at home and you have 3 kids, well, now you're going to be making $36,000 a year to be able to, as a support payment for you. It's your money, it's your tax dollars, it's your share, and you can bring in 10 kids and make 120 grand a year and have a very small classroom and teach very, very specific needs for each child. Or you can put a community center, your church, your local Mason's Hall, whatever it is, and parents will choose the provider. We will eliminate the name teacher, and it will become a provider. The public and Catholic system will be a provider. Your grandmother will be a provider. Your wife will be a provider, a trusted best friend. I would sooner send my kids to my next door neighbor who I know than send them to a public school for someone that I don't know. And at the end of the day, it does 2 things. By attaching the funding to the child, give parents a choice. It does 2 things. One, it makes everybody vying for your dollar, both public and private, tailor an education system to your needs. And you become a client, and they have to woo you to get your funding. The second thing it does is it takes away all the power of politicians like me and unions from influencing political discourse and outcomes. That is the most important things, because right now the Liberals, the NDP, and the Greens are socialist driven public servants of them to get their vote.
They want more power.
Yeah.
They always give the excuse that we're going to fix it. Meanwhile, they collectively broke it.
Yeah, well, they all broke it. You know, what is a fiscal conservative anymore? Do we know what that is, both federally and provincially? You know, that used to be a thing. Where's fiscal conservatism anymore?
Yeah,
and you know,
they're the parties that the media won't mention.
Right, and you know, these 2 debates that we were allowed to attend, I was the only one that brought up Ontario's $380 billion. I did see a thing the other day that said it was $426 billion, but $380 billion is what I'm going with. And if you think of how much is that, how many days is a million seconds? It's 11 days. How many days is a billion seconds? It's 31 years, and we are $380 billion in debt. It's crazy. It's crazy. Nobody's talking about it.
Yep.
Our kids, our grandkids will be servicing this debt until they're 100 years old. If we don't pay it off.
Marriage was like 1 billion hours.
Well, then I've reached the billion second mark in my marriage, because we're 30 years.
Awesome.
So
That's
going
great.
on 31.
Awesome.
So yeah, we will attach the funding to the kids. Parents will make a choice. Parents will be in control. And everybody out there who wants your kid to go to your school and your curriculum, they will have to compete for your money.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic. I think that could be applied to healthcare as well. Like, we have big long lineups for a certain procedure, like the what are those machines you go in? MRI machines. So if there's like a year waiting list for that, someone knows how to do it and how to run the machine. They could rent a spot in the hospital, and they could give their libertarian card, their education and healthcare card, and use it for that particular service, and there's no waiting list, and then you open up competition, so one might offer coffee with it, and then the other one says, oh, you got coffee, I'll offer rye and coke.
Well, and I agree with that. I think there should be some level of private partnership in regards to allowing people to be able to pay. It's not what I'm selling, though.
No.
It's, and there's some very hard libertarians that are beating me up over this whole issue of how to fix the healthcare system. And to fix the healthcare system, like I've said in debates and like I've been saying for the last 7 years, is the healthcare system functions very well with the money that it has for the bureaucracy. And therein lies the problem. That's the fundamental problem. All those 4 areas that I told you about, Ministry of Health used to have 300,000. It has now 680,000 employees in it that aren't frontline workers. There's 5 layers of bureaucracy above the 14 LHINs. So how do you fix that?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want a U.S. style system? Because that really looks like it's horrible. It's a great concept. It's a great idea. It's a libertarian principle. But really, the problem with the healthcare system is we don't own it. And we entrust politicians to work with it. So in order to fix it, we have to own it. And how do we do that? Well, your share, when Doug Ford took over, it was $64 billion. Today, it's $78 billion. So $14 billion more and 50% poorer work performance. That's what we got. $14 billion more and 50% less service. It's crazy. How are people lungs? So you take your $5,600, you reinstate the 14 LHINs across the province. They become regions. They're local health integration networks in regions across the province. And anybody who lives in that region, you direct 100% of your healthcare funding to your region. Right now, it's less than 50% of your share of $5,600 that goes to your region. And the next thing that you do is every government, the Liberals did it, the Conservatives do it, they appoint the boards of the LHINs and they appoint the boards of the hospital. If you wonder why these people aren't screaming at the top of their lungs, why I have to keep X wing and X wing of CHEO closed, is because they're not allowed to hire. So if you hold elections within the local community, there's lots of good people that would be able to run the board, people that are qualified, people that are actually qualified, not appointees. And you elect a board that then runs the money from the people. And you empower that board with all hiring, all building, and everything with the funding that they have. And they can prioritize their own list. You don't need Queen's Park to hire a doctor. If you got the money, you can pay for a doctor's education all the way through, and you can work within your community. You can pay for nurses, you can pay for all of it. You double the funding overnight in the 14 LHINs if you just did it that way. And again, what it does is it removes the power of the unions, and it removes the power of the government to make any promises whatsoever, because they no longer own the service. They don't own the service. It's owned by the people. The people direct the funding. The people elect the people that are giving them their priorities of what do we need, 100 new doctors, 50 new nurses, 10 MRI machines. They just have to use their money and prioritize it. Why aren't we doing that?
Yeah, if there's a demand for something, absolutely, then people will want to do it. That works with a lot of different things. When there's a demand, there's a job available. I do like your opt-in, opt-out formula, which I think is very important for people to understand what a libertarian vote means for the future.
And that funding, just like your education, could be used to buy private. Now, the problem with that is both the federal government and the provincial government, and more importantly, the Constitution guarantees public health care. So to get the systems in place, the only place where they have private care is in BC and Quebec, believe it or not. Quebec, because they didn't sign the Constitution, they own all of their own stuff, and they don't even have to remit their HST that they collect. They don't remit any taxes to the government. None.
Really?
Oh God, never have.
I didn't know.
That's part of not signing the Constitution. They don't have to remit it. It's part of their transfer payments. They keep it all, right? So when you pay HST or carbon taxes or anything else like that, it stays in the province of Quebec.
You know, and
Unlike every other province.
they don't have Dominion voting machines either in Quebec.
I did not know that.
Yep.
Huh.
So if there was a pandemic to come and you were majority government, and you should be, I mean, I believe it. I don't know why you're not. It's like
the bought and paid for media.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. People are, driving their trucks all across the country for freedom, and it was right there all along.
Yeah.
It's like, and I read all the parties because I wanted to hear what everyone has to say, and of course they all have sugar on their platforms, and I expect that. Like Crombie's trying to buy votes. She's doubling ODSP, so she's really trying to buy off the poor people that she created in the first place.
Yeah, that sounds like Karl Marx or a salad.
God. Problem, reaction, solution.
Hegelian politics, right? Government creates a problem to offer a solution. I mean,
but I am black-pilled. I'm sorry to say that, but I just feel like our government is captured. They're all like complicit with this agenda, this 2030 UN agenda. What's your position on the WEF, WHO, the UN, NATO? What's your opinion and position with those entities?
A majority libertarian government would remove itself and end all relationships with the United Nations, with the World Economic Forum, if there is any. I've yet to find any, but definitely the UN Sustainable Agenda, Kiki, which is Maggie Braun, who's really, really doing amazing work across Canada. I don't know if you've heard of her, Kiki, in doing presentations, depositions to local councils to make them aware when these local councils, even my little Oxford Mills Community Association, we now can apply for green funding from the federal government. Why the hell is the federal government interfering in provincial municipalities? So anything to do with World Economic Forum, the United Nations Sustainable Agenda, all that's gone. All that's gone because it is the exterior, non-voted entities, OGDs, other governmental departments, that are interfering in our rights of land ownership, land use, and the UN is a joke as far as I'm concerned. It has become a powerful tool for money laundering. And that's why Trump left it. And I if I was federally, the majority government, I'd be out of that stuff in a heartbeat. And anything to do with climate change is all gone from a libertarian government. I mean,
Maggie Braun, she's really onto the ICLEI.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. ICLEI, sorry.
She called it KICLEI to kick them out. But she has been successful with her arguments with the city councils to opt out, because it seems all innocent, and they do it everything like that. They name bills the opposite of the truth of what's happening. But one thing I love about your platform is enacting recall legislation to hold politicians accountable for violating their election promises. I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah,
I wish we had that right now.
So the platform that you see, I wrote the policy behind our 9 areas of governance that we want to improve, where the people become more powerful. Recall legislation, it's not up there. You won't find the 2026 platform because we were supposed to vote on it. The caucus was supposed to vote on it on February 7th, but they called an election, so we have to go with what's there according to our constitution. But when I had my candidates meeting for all the candidates, I laid out the ideas, because we're a party of ideas to try to talk on the same level, and it's about reducing the size and scope of government. One of the key planks of that decentralizing Queen's Park is to empower your MPP. Right now, your MPP has no power. Why is it we elect a person that has no legislative authority and no financial authority to be able to act on any land use and planning? If you go to your local council, they'll say the biggest hindrance that they have is the provincial bureaucracy and trying to get, you know, a couple hundred houses built in a housing block. So we will, in Ontario, we will pretty much cleanse the Municipal Act and remove all of the references to provincial control. We will end the conservation authority and completely close them, sell off every asset of them. And we will end MPAC as well, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, and empower your MPP with all those powers. And then finally, it will revert back pre-Mike Harris days to where all of your taxation will be done through your local council, i.e. your city, your town in which you live in. So these uploaded costs that now, when you go to complain about your property assessment or the conservation authority coming in and taking half your property as wetlands, while you go to your local MPP and they say, well, sorry, that's a provincial thing. I have no choice. I can't do anything about it. Well, that will end. And if you live in Hamilton Center, a socialist, Marxist, communist controlled center, well, great. You can add as much carbon tax as you want. You can add all the school taxes you want for the first bit, but then people will vote you out. And we won't need to hold provincial elections anymore. The premier won't have any power because every individual MPP, if they step down, get recalled with recall legislation because they're not doing what they said they were going to do, then you can just hold a local election within that riding and the party system will cease to exist and people will be governed by the votes in which they cast, no matter what party they cast them for. But we need a majority government to enact that legislation.
Yes.
That's why we have to play the party game.
Yeah. Well, that would be amazing. In my world, in my brain, I think Canada would be so happy to have a perpetual opposition and majority libertarian government. I don't think people realize how happy they would be because they would have the freedom to succeed.
Yeah, and they'd have more money in their pocket. The last thing, so the recall legislation, it's simple. I mean, even if we use the party system, we can still enact the recall legislation for the government, the centralized government. But we won't do that because the people will hold the power. And like I said, I don't care if you elect an NDP, I don't care if you elect a Green, a communist, or whatever. It doesn't really matter anymore about the party system and who talks. It only matters about what's going on in your riding. And if someone isn't doing their job, gets 70% of the electorate, comes up, boom, they're gone. You have a local election. There's no national election. Your needs are met, your desires are met, your concerns are met, and if they're not, you toss the bum out.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah. But it's the same with property rights. Like, you never own your home if you're paying property taxes. Would the Libertarian Party do something about this so people can own their homes and die in their homes and leave it to their children without being...
The federal government's coming after that. They got your secondary homes, and now they're coming after your primary homes. You know what the really funny part is nobody understands that the secondary home, your cottage or whatever it was, the study was done by Stephen Harper. The legislation was proposed but never enacted, and it's the first thing that Trudeau did was force you to take, if you had $1 million Muskoka home and a $100,000 Ottawa home, you could pick the Muskoka $1 million home as your primary residence, and the other one as your secondary, which was subject to capital gains when you sold the secondary. Trudeau's coming after that primary. It is through wealth and land transfer and wealth transfer that every generation has succeeded. And now they are taking away that ability for that wealth to be passed on from the largest generation, the boomers. And I'm a boomer. So the largest generation of wealth holders right now is the boomers, and they're going to take half that wealth, ensuring your children never get ahead. But we have a plan for that if you're ready to hear it.
So how many other parties are you running against in your riding? They all,
I have the
yep.
new blue, Chris Guerra. He's a fantastic guy, an
Yep.
amazing young man. Well, actually, no, he's not young. He's 60. We have he showed up at the Brockville debate where we were excluded. The new blue Ontario and myself, libertarians, were excluded. And then obviously the board, the blue, orange, red, and green. But let's talk about land and private property rights.
Mm.
And I wrote four policies that couple into one platform plank. And that platform plank is that this country, when it was formed as Upper and Lower Canada, and Ontario became the province of Canada, the Union of Canada. In order to attract people for the first 100 years before that, we gave away land patent grants. And I don't know if you've ever heard of them before, have you? Land patent grants?
No, I've never heard of that. But
So you remember history class when they said they are offering people parcels of land, come to the new world, right? Right?
Yeah, I think they're doing that in PEI or East Coast somewhere.
I haven't heard of it yet, but that ended in 1985.
Oh,
Ontario has 639 million acres of vacant land, public lands owned by you and me. We own them. We own them. And 63 million of those acres are within 1.5 hours of the U.S. border. And if we talk about our youth, I don't know if you have kids or grandkids or not, they have no hope of owning a home. Owning a home begins with land. We will grant land, 1 to 5 to 10 acres, depending on the parcel. That land will come with a couple of restrictions. 1, you must occupy that land within 2 years. 2, you must have an approved waste system on it, whether it's a Johnny on the spot or a 1,000-gallon holding tank that you get pumped out once a week, or a proper septic system. And 3, you cannot sell it for 5 years. The Ontario Building Code will no longer apply to private property. I'll say that again. The Ontario Building Code will no longer apply to private property. If you're a commercial builder, you will follow the Ontario Building Code and provide a safe product. But if we're going to give our children hope and our grandchildren hope, or probably, as a matter of fact, it's 30 and 40-year-olds that are wanting to get a piece of land and grow their own food because they're tired of eating the poison food that's out there now. So this is one of the greatest ways that we could create in the first 5 years about $800 billion in the first 2 years, up to $3.2 trillion worth of spending GDP as people develop their own land. Imagine getting a kid today with a student loan, and the first year that they have this piece of land, they pay off all their debt and they gut it out in a RV, because you'll be able to put a tent, an RV, a tiny home, because the building code won't apply. Occupancy permits will not apply on private property land. So if whatever you decide to live in, whether it's a mud brick house heated with seal oil from Club Seals off the coast of Newfoundland, you can go ahead and do that. It's up to you. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but year 1, you pay off all your debt. Year 2, you now have, if it's a 5-acre parcel, $100,000 in equity and land value that you could borrow against to put in the foundation, pay that off the following year, borrow another $30,000, $50,000, $70,000, and because you're not paying rent anymore, and then frame in the house, right? And in 5 years' time, you might actually have a small mortgage or be mortgage free because you're not paying rent. Yeah. Right? That's how we empower and enrich the wealth for youth. Yeah. Nobody's talking about it. Why aren't we giving this land away for our youth?
Yep. Another thing we're not talking about is all the fast food restaurants have been tested their food and was 100% contaminated with glyphosate. So would a libertarian government do something about this poisons being sprayed on our food, the glyphosate? Is there anything we can do?
Personally, we have a 5-acre homestead. We grow about, if I was allowed to kill animals, I'm not allowed to kill anything. My wife and daughter won't let me kill anything. But right now we grow 40% of all the food we eat here.
Fantastic.
I grow my own Encorn wheat, which is a 400-year-old wheat that's non-GMO.
Wow.
I do sourdough. I preserve all my own meats. I make all my own cold cuts. I make all my own sausages, salamis. I preserve both canning and pressure canning, dehydrating. I don't freeze dry stuff. What comes out of our garden gets put up, put away, and we eat it all winter as long as we can. Yes, we still have to supplement with broccoli and cauliflower and things that just don't
Yeah.
store well, right? But
Yeah.
for the
Yep.
most part, yeah, there's very little I buy from the store. I make my own cheeses. I make my own butter,
Wow.
ricotta.
Oh my
You know,
God.
this is
I
what
want
we
to move.
need to get people back into to get out of the corporate
Yeah.
dependency on the food system, which
Yeah.
is poison. It's poison, poison, poison. We render our own tallow. We save our bacon fat. I save my chicken fat. All of those things are fats that we use in this house. End of
Hmm.
story. When I do a brisket, I render beef tallow, and that beef tallow becomes then a very wonderful high temperature cooking oil for red meats. Right?
Did the libertarian government do something to protect our food supply?
I'm going to say no, and the reason why I'll qualify that is because irrespective of how you and I might feel about that, the need to feed 15 million people comes with the cost of pesticides. But if we empower people to be able to grow more, if we stop the regulations that do not allow local farmers, small producers like myself, to sell my eggs, sell my meats, sell my produce free of regulation or government inspection to people who want to actually do it. We call it the beginning of farm gate sales. No longer will there be laws that restrict small and medium-sized farms from selling any product that they produce themselves. And
Hmm.
the existing system can still exist, and for those that like and want to buy into that system, go right ahead. But no longer will we in dairy, poultry, meat, fish. No longer. It's up to you to decide whether you know that person well enough in their animal husbandry, if you want to buy that beef, chicken, or pork from them. If you
Well,
know that person well enough to buy their dairy products, then you can go ahead and
yeah.
do that. It will no longer be illegal to do that under a majority libertarian government.
Yeah. Well, I do respect that viewpoint. Um, like the federal government went in with guns and military because someone was selling raw milk.
Yeah, that's right
And
down the road here.
really,
Yeah, Smith was his name. Schmidt, Mike Schmidt.
wow. I
Uh,
mean, they bought the car. They bought the cow collectively.
yeah,
They all owned the cow, so they did what they were supposed to do legally, and it was like a private. It was their milk collectively. But would you stop the end this ridiculous thing about raw milk? Would you allow people to buy and drink it if they wanted it?
absolutely, without a doubt. They're the two systems can exist and consumers can have a choice is the libertarian viewpoint. That's why I say when we will deregulate and decriminalize all of those farm gate sales, we're
Hmm.
not talking maybe $100 million a year. Might be in 5 years' time is what the impact it will have to the existing dairy. Oh, by the way, we'll end all subsidies for any dairy system whatsoever. Um, uh, but
Okay.
if we open farm gate sales, you can actually have small scale farmers. That's what's stopping small scale farmers right now. That and the quota system. If you want to be able to get into to become a dairy farmer, you need about $10 million to just in capital startup funding, and you
Hmm.
can't get that unless you got a quota. Try getting a quota when they've all been bought up by the major Saputos and all those other places, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's government regulated corporate monopolies, and it's not that I want to destroy them because there is a need to have that kind of volume and production, but it shouldn't be illegal to go buy a half a pig off the next door neighbor that you watched raise their pig. and have to pay a $300 processing fee or a $150 processing fee or an $11 chicken processing fee to be able to sell it at the farmer's market. I mean, last week, Independent here in Kempville had whole chickens, about 3-pound chickens for $7 a piece. Well, I pay $11 for a processor if I want to sell it. How the hell am I supposed to compete with that after feeding, housing, and doing all the things that you can't? Well, the corporations have the bought and paid for. Their own employees are the rubber stampers in their processing facilities. So
yeah, and I would like to see the end of factory farming too. I think that's cruel. I mean, you're going to eat them anyway, but there's no point in being cruel. And I certainly don't like hormones because whatever they inject into these animals, we're going to eat it. It's, we're going to, like the antibiotics and, all these injections for the cows and the pigs and the chickens, the hormones make them fat, just for profit. They're willing to harm the chicken just to make it bigger.
There's a libertarian argument for that process.
Yeah.
I mean, in a free market society, if you have the best product and you got it there safely and humanely, then people will come and buy it. But I look at it this way. If we could do this in 20 years' time, what we will have is more small producers than we do big producers. And, for those that believe in climate change, if you reduce the shipping costs and have more processing facilities, especially for pork, dairy, and beef, or pork and beef,
right,
you will actually reduce the amount of pollution you have in trucking. We need to build more processing facilities that aren't owned by corporations, right? 100%. Local processing facilities and butcher shops. It's in 10 years' time, we could actually outsell the corporate market with local driven food, as long as we can unregulate it or stop it from being criminal, because right now it's criminal to do it, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So farm gate sales will be legal without any kind of condition. It's up to the consumer to decide. And you take a risk if you're going to sell a salmonella infested chicken, right? If you don't do the processing right. I know I personally don't buy anything from anybody. I don't know how they've looked after their animals. So
yeah, and I think they should be liable, but I also think drug companies should be liable if there's harm. They shouldn't be able to just dismiss it and say, well, no, it's not us. You did it yourself.
So in the vaccination schedule, like I said, I'll be 62 in April. It was 18 doses of vaccines we got between the age of 6 and 18, 6 and 16 when I was a kid. It's now 78.
Yeah.
I will eliminate all of those requirements for people to have mandatory.
I agree. I'm with you 100%.
HPV vaccines. HPV vaccine was developed to help with cervical cancer for women. It was such a successful product that they forced upon young women that they said, hey, maybe this will help with testicular cancer for boys. And now we have a female designed drug that is being injected into our young male adolescent prepubescent boys.
Well, I would like to see if you want to inject your children, you pay for it. I just want to get it out of the government's hand. And if there's harm, I don't want any more free rides for any, chemical.
Well, libertarians are a free society. Like, I always ask people, do you know who Dr. Henry Morgentaler is? Especially women, I ask them this question. And Jane Doe, do you know who they are? You ask 30-year-old women. I don't know if you remember the case of Henry Morgentaler, whether you believe in abortion or not. He was doing illegal abortions in the 80s in the Supreme Court. They arrested him and charged him, and it took 3 years, Supreme Court challenge. And he eventually won his case. And it's not that he won the case the right to kill babies. The significance of the case in 1988 was this, is that a woman finally had the right to control the destiny of her own body. It was a huge women's rights win for being able to control your own body and say yes or no to any thing that gets put into it. And then along comes the vaccine mandates and
Yeah.
destroys every woman's right. And where were those feminists?
Mm-hmm.
I,
Yeah,
I
I
just
mean,
I don't understand. I had this discussion with my daughter today, and I said, "Do you know who this person is?" The 30-year-old cop that arrested me, one of the female OPP officers. I said, "Do you know who this is?" You don't even know. How is it that you don't know that women got bodily autonomy under Section 7 of the Charter of Rights and Freedom to be able to choose with their own mind whether they wanted to have a baby or not?
yeah,
I don't agree with abortion. I don't care if anybody does it. I personally am not gay. I don't care if you're gay. It doesn't bother me. Live your life as you see fit. Do as you see fit.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
No, I agree. I agree. Um, I looked at all the ingredients of all the vaccines because I had lost 3 children as a direct result of vaccines.
are you kidding me?
Because of that, I went right into, researched every single one, and I looked at all the ingredients, and I knew that aluminum hurts the immune system. It breaks it down, it weakens it, and so there's not one thing in there that's beneficial to anyone. Nothing. And the fact that there's DNA in there, fragments, that will interfere with your own DNA. And yes, I did lose 3 children, and it's something you never get over, and it's a heal that will never, it's a wound that never heals.
I'm so
But
sorry to hear that. I had no idea.
it's okay. It's okay. I see them as eternal. They were young and innocent, and I will see them again, and I look forward to that. I miss them, but they really propelled me into my investigative research, and it really led me to this point. And that's why I wanted you on the show, because your voice and your platform could really create a renaissance in Canada.
Oh, I
And
agree.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
all the things that you're talking about, what they've done to our collective psyche, to our collective ownership of the individual, is criminal. It is the most dastardly thing that I've watched in my lifetime. I joined the Army in 1981 as a completely lost kid, heading for a life of crime, I'm sure, if I didn't actually end up joining the Army. And when I was a kid, if you stole from the Stone's cherry tree down in Brighton, Ontario, Mr. Stone would stand out on his back step and load up his black powder shotgun with rock salt and shoot us. Well, that wasn't the hard part. Coming home with rock salt in your butt cheeks and up your back just proved to your father you were stealing, and you got the shit beat out of you for that. And somewhere along the way, we lost.
Yeah, they took away parental rights. You couldn't spank your kid anymore.
Yeah.
That's where it all began. It's been an increment.
I was probably one of the last kids to get the
Yeah,
strap.
I got
6 on each hand, right? For calling my English teacher Miss Turkey Neck because she was all bent over like this.
But that little element of fear was all it took to get order. It worked in the classroom. It worked in the home. And when they removed that ability to discipline, and the Bible says, spare the rod, spoil the child. I mean, there's, it's absolutely true. I don't like violence, but I mean,
there's a time and a place for a spanking.
Yeah,
the Supreme Court has validated that.
Like personally, just the threat of a spanking worked for me with my son, who's like 40 years old now, and I'm only in my 40s too. But just the idea. See, I use more of art of the deal with my son, because I would say, well, 1 hour television, you have to like deal with them. Because I wasn't really into spanking or anything like that. So I had to work around that. And there's ways to do it. But I think they've disenfranchised parents so much that their children are walking all over them and creating chaos into their own homes.
Why?
And the education system is also indoctrinating them.
It is the education system that has destroyed the respect for parents. It's
Yep.
destroyed the respect for religion. It's destroyed the respect for free thought and thinking and honest to goodness debate on pros and cons, not left and right. It is exactly, if you've never looked up Sal Alinsky's 7 Steps of Communism,
Yes.
or 8 Steps to the Road to Communism, you'll see exactly why our kids. And you know, the really ironic part is that some of the arguments that the NDP and Liberal candidates were talking about, and these are all questions from the left center unions, right? What are you going to do to curb violence in the classroom? And I said, violence in the classroom didn't start happening until after the new charter and public service unions came into existence after the new charter, the right to organize in 1988. And I said, fundamentally, the indoctrination system we call, and that's what I call it, the indoctrination system that creates self-entitled kids that disrespect their parents, and you expect them not to disrespect a teacher unit when they're taught not to respect their parents, and they don't have to tell their parents about sex change or vaccines or anything that they're going through, that the school can then hold that. Each one of these have been implemented since 1972. These are Sal Alinsky's, right?
Oh, yeah.
And people just don't understand it. Number 3 is where we are at the final level.
The debt.
Yeah.
Well, they got healthcare, control healthcare, poverty, increase the poverty level. They certainly did that, didn't they?
We're at 3. 3 and 2 go hand in hand.
Yeah, increase the debt level to an unsustainable level. Yeah, absolutely.
And all the rest are already in place.
Yeah, gun control, they got that. Welfare, take control of every aspect, food, housing, income.
Socialism, Soviet bloc housing.
Absolutely, yep. Education, take control.
How do we fix a candidate? How do we fix the house care? What is your plan for social housing?
Yeah. Build more, but meanwhile they're flooding twice as many people in from other countries.
It's right there in front of us for the last 40 years.
Yep.
People don't understand it's the roadmap.
Yep.
Implemented by Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Brian Mulroney, John Chrétien and Paul Martin, Stephen Harper.
Yeah, all of them.
Trudeau and Carney the incarnate, and Pierre Poilievre the incarnate awaiting. And people think he's going to get elected. You know, that's a really strange thing. They think it's a given that Pierre Poilievre is going to get elected. I study demographics. I studied a lot of demographics. And I'm telling you this right now. I'm not anti-immigrant. We don't have enough children because of high taxation. That's a failing thing that has happened since 1972, along with taking the woman out of the household under the women's lib movement, which I question now. Was it to double the tax base of working people contributing taxes under the guise of women's liberation? But we stopped having more kids. All taxes in 1972 for federal, provincial, and municipal were 17%. Today it's 54%. So we're not having kids because we can't afford them. That's why we're not having kids. Government plans, creates, and implements inflationary practices, minimum wage, carbon taxation. And you know, I had this discussion with 8 or 10 people at the end of I think it was last Tuesday night debate. There was a couple of young kids. They said, well, what are you going to do about minimum wage? I said, well, you know, 3 weeks ago on the Ford's website, the government website, it said that minimum wage in Ontario was going up to $17.82 an hour on the 1st of April as part of his improving access to fairer society, whatever act or whatever it's called. And it's disappeared now. What people don't realize is that government, we're seeing these forced minimum wage increases in the increasing the debt. But what they don't realize is that every time you increase minimum wage, I'll just use a loaf of bread. It's not taxable, but use it as an example. Say a loaf of bread is $1, and the government collects 13 cents of HST on it. And when they increase minimum wage, that now goes up along with the carbon tax. It goes to $2 and they collect 26 cents. So every time you double the cost of a product that is subject to HST, you double the revenue. Ford is swimming in cash right now. They need inflation in order to collect general revenues from HST every 12 months to meet with the inflation that they're creating. And people don't understand that once you create that inflation, you collect more HST, you increase poverty because your wage increase disappears through inflation. And the last kick in the butt that nobody even looks at, because who gets a paycheck that shows your tax breakdown anymore, is your CPP and EI go up, your premiums go up each month. So you're actually getting poorer and you're losing more benefits. A minimum wage worker makes $32,000 a year now if they work full-time 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. You've just lost 30% of your carbon tax, GST, and all these other rebates that are out there. And when was the last time, Paul, you and me have heard a provincial or federal government talk about a general tax increase? They don't need to do it. Governments fell on a 1% rise on a sales tax on fuel, Joe Clark, right? So they don't even talk about that anymore. They don't even talk about the deficit. All they do is they create inflationary measures that increase the HST tax revenue for the government, and they can keep pushing.
Yeah. Well, I want the Libertarians to get some chairs. I want a majority. Because
2026, I got 17 candidates running. That's it.
Oh yeah.
That's it. It's sad.
It is. I think it's just a lot of black pilling to just see what they're up against, and it's disheartening, you know.
Honestly,
the media is complicit.
We were not ready. I did not think this $200 check, as it turned out to be, was his plan all along. Like, I mean, nobody on the executive. I had one person, one of the long-term members, said, you know, I think this $200 thing, we might be going, no, there's no way. The demographics aren't there. He's got a majority. Why would he need to go? Like, we were all like debating it. Like, you know, should we be getting ready? No. It's, you know, he's got a year left. He's got a majority. It ain't going to matter, right? No. And here we are. And it's not like we didn't try to get more. We just had 11 days to get more. You know, and we couldn't do it because we weren't set up. And it's a bloody shame. And I
want you to get seats.
Yeah, well, all we can do is hope
that
we actually do well.
If you get a seat, you have a voice.
No, you don't.
Well, like in the legislature, you can actually inform people about the things that are in the bills that nobody else is talking about. That's why I need. No.
This came up in one of the debates. I said, do you think if I got 100% of the vote here in this riding, that I would be able to stand up during working hours and have my 15 minutes on the floor? Do you know how the legislature works? The party in power delegates the actual question periods at question period, the time at question period. Absolutely. And if you look at Mike Schreiner, who's the only Green representative in the Queen's Park, his time to speak is in the evenings and on the weekends. That's when they grant him time. So they actually take him out of the picture. So even if you were elected as an independent, you don't have control over the floor, and you don't even have permission to speak unless it's done by the party whip or the reigning government.
Wow. I didn't know that. What about the opposition
Federal government, same thing.
What about opposition party?
That's where the time's spent. It's shared between the majority of the sitting government and the official opposition, yet 60-40 time.
Well, I mean, if you get a seat, you could at least go to, TikTok and wherever, even my show, to at least present the information. But I think if you got seats in the House, or at least a majority, you would never lose it.
No,
Like
I agree.
people would see what's going on and see a transformation
Their
of their.
lives would improve under a libertarian government because, well, one, we probably get rid of at least within the first 2 years, a third of all bureaucracy and public
Mhm.
service, sort of like an Ontario Libertarian Doge. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh
Elon Musk
God,
type thing. Go ahead, paint me a fascist, paint me a racist, call
I
me all
would
the
love it.
Nazi names that you want. The people that hate Trump, the TDS, the Trump derangement.
I
Uh,
like him.
but you know what? I like the man. I don't think
Yep.
much for his morals, but I like his economic policies. But I'm
Yep.
telling you, he's really testing my liking of him lately.
Yeah.
Attacking us and causing chaos is just not something I expected from him.
No,
And
well, I do expect it. I expect him. He sees it as a game of chess, eh? And
yeah,
he's seeing, Ford. I want to rip the liquor off the shelves. So he's seeing immature, unstatesmanlike, unfit governance. So he's being immature back.
so what are we in an election for? I'll tell you why. Because very quickly, um, when when the Trump government announced these tariffs, it literally sent a shockwave, like raising $10 million in 2 weeks, and then they took that and $10 million the week after. It terrified the government because,
Mhm.
like I said, it will expose the weakness of the actual Canadian economy
Yep.
and the absolute dependency on the United States.
Yep.
So Ford said, "Well, hey, I better get on the Team Canada team and hide behind Sock Boy." So that he could, use the power of the blame it on the Trudeau team if it fails. And then DJ, he kind of held off on the tariffs. And he realized right away that he's on the wrong team. He should have taken the Daniel Smith approach, gone hat in hand down to Mar-a-Lago before he took over,
Yep.
sat down with the man, because that's what Trump would expect from a man,
Yeah.
from a leader. He would expect
Yeah.
him to come down and sit down and say, "Hey, Donald. Hey, Doug. How you doing? We got some tough times coming up. What can I do to help you out here?" He didn't do that. He ran to be hid behind the skirts of Trudeau, and now he's going to pay the price. Well, it's not him. It's us, the people, that are going to pay the price. So the election is because he knows that he's on the wrong team, and he knows that Ontario is going to tank in the next 15 months before the actual June 2026 original election for what it be. So that's why he threw us in the election, because the Liberals weren't ready and the NDP weren't ready. They're just new leaders, and he is doing everything anti-democratic that Zelensky is doing, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I agree. Is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with? Any information about the Libertarian Party that you think they need to know that we haven't covered?
I would ask you to look deep in your heart and ask yourself, because when I speak to people, they're libertarian. And I would ask you, has anything changed? What promises have been made? And why are they still making the same promises 40 years later? Now, I don't care if it's New Blue, Ontario, or Libertarians. The only way until we gain power to change the system is to sway enough votes so that when they look at the election results, they said, Jesus, a lot of people voted for Libertarians, New Blue, and Ontario Party. That is the only way they'll change. As long as they keep winning, they will keep doing exactly what they're doing and not give two sweet Jesuses about anybody else because they get power.
Yeah.
And that I'm asking you, take a look inside yourself and take a moment to see if your vote really does matter. Swing it to one of those other parties and swing it all across this province. Don't give it
Yep.
to the main parties. Give it to an independent, a libertarian, a New Blue, Ontario First. I don't care who it is. If you really, really want to make a difference, this will be the first thing. If we can get them to wake up with election results that show that they didn't get the vote. And if they can increase the amount of the others, it will sway them to change policy. That's the only thing we can do until someone can achieve a majority government.
That's true. That's true. Well, I would like to see opposition majority between the New Blue and the Libertarians. Just back and
Yeah,
forth, back and forth,
there
back
wouldn't
and
be
forth.
much opposition.
Not really. Not really. But, you know, who can tax most? Who can drop taxes the most?
Who can cut government? We're the cutters of government.
Yeah.
Honestly, you could probably get rid of half the government and nobody would notice a difference in the service, but you'd save about $890 billion a year in salaries on a $1.2 trillion pension debenture that is not realized nor recorded. If all those public servants retired tomorrow,
I like to think that God can do anything. So if you get a majority government, will you get rid of that deficit? Is that a priority?
If I can, well, let's put it in numbers. So I'm a numbers guy. Let's just say the debt's 380 billion. I think it might be 426. So if I paid off $100 billion a year, it'll take me 3 years and 3/8 of or 4 months to pay off the debt. So how do I pay for the rest of government? So I either have to cut government or cut program spending. So that's kind of not doable. If I pay it off $50 billion a year, then it'll take 7 years to pay it off. And that's reasonable. I can find $50 billion of savings in a $2.4 trillion economy. I can find $50 billion worth of savings.
Yeah.
I mean, we got $22 billion going to climate change and green energy projects. I'd like to repurpose that money for infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, and natural gas build out. But I mean, that would be my first choice. But paying down the debt would come. And if we paid it off $10 billion a year, it'll take 33 years to pay it off. Right?
Yeah. As long as it's going down, that's, incentive to keep voting for you. And if you're cutting programs, you automatically have money. I would like to see, like, if you cut 10 billion for getting rid of a useless, pointless agenda item, I would like give it in tax benefits and paid death. Like, I would use it for multiple things that would benefit people from Ontario and lower the debt faster. And would you also be transparent and just like show the deficit and
I would love to be able to do that, because they don't do it now. I would just simply put it up here. Here's this week. This is how much money we saved. This is how much we're putting towards this program. This is how much we're putting towards the debt. In 7 years' time, if you elect us again, we will have no debt, and I can cut your tax rate in half by 50%. I can eliminate the sales tax portion, 8% on all sales. I can eliminate personal income tax. You know what I mean? I can raise ODST payments. Those are things that are real. Why aren't they doing that now? Because they're not even talking about it. They don't care about it. They're going to just add more to it. Doug Ford said was spending $150 billion to offset any possible potential tariff rebates. Pierre Poilievre said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase those tariffs on coming across the border, and then I'm going to use that money to subsidize the companies. Well, how conservative is that?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a realist. I'm a loyal brand libertarian, but I mean, honestly, in the federal election, PPC, libertarian first, obviously. Again, if we can have enough votes on either one of those two things, we can actually sway the Conservatives to go back to being conservative or possibly win the seats. Right?
Yeah, they've lost their way. Yeah. They really have. Even provincially. They just it's like they've all been compromised. Or
they all have.
It seems that way, really. I mean, I'm very black pill, but I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to thank you for putting your name out there. I think the Libertarians made a really excellent choice for leader, and I'm glad that you put yourself in that position for your country. And I'm honored to have you on the show, and hopefully you will get a seat or 2 or 3, just so it's in there. You'd have to get in there, and people have to, start putting your name on the polls. I wish the polls they never have a libertarian choice because they not want freedom. But if you do want freedom, vote for a Libertarian Party and the New Blue too. I won't have a liberal on my show because it's the truth table, and they just don't qualify.
You know, bring on the New Blue, bring on the
Yep.
Ontario Party, bring on individual candidates and have them just
Yep.
ask some basic
Yep.
questions. Ask the questions you just asked me, and
Yep.
no debate. Just give time to
Yeah.
those candidates, and the wonderful thing that will happen is people, if they're hearing the truth and it's spoken in a calm, reasonable, rational manner like you and I are speaking, people are not used to that and it will go viral.
Hmm.
That's the amazing thing about independent media is that you guys have the power in one viral video to change the world. And I thank you for the opportunity to be here.
No, I'm the one that's honored. If you live at Leeds, Grenville, you know anybody in Thousand Islands or Rideau Lakes, let them know to send them this video. And
New Blue or Libertarian, take your pick.
yep, thank you so much, Mark. And I
Thank you,
hope to
sir.
see you
Have a good.
again. Yes, have a great night, and I wish you the best next week.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you all for coming to the Truth Table, where you're going to find the truth, whether you like it or not. It's available. Sometimes you have to look for it, but it's really hasn't been more important to do a little research and find out who the candidates are, because you may like a person, but if they're an NDP and support critical race theory, they're someone you do not want to vote for. You have to really vote by your own principles, and it's not hasn't never been more valuable to look at each party and look at their platforms and get to know who's running. And I hope this has been helpful uh, in your decision to vote uh, next Thursday. I'm Paul Everton, Truth Table. Thank you all so much for joining me, and Mark Snow as well. We'll see you next time on the Truth Table.